How do you pronounce your name?
Where?
Omer?
Yeah.
Okay.
I need to change my name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just realized it.
The three dots, if you go to the top right corner of your picture, you should be able to rename yourself there.
All I see is mute. I don't see the three dots.
I see,
Hover over over your image.
Okay, I am.
Top right corner.
yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Unmute.
The
Very
host.
strange.
The host can also rename you. So whoever the host is, tell them what name you want.
Yeah, okay. Okay, Rizwan, I'm just typing it here.
Okay.
If you could change it for me, since I can't seem to figure that out.
Can I request our coordinator for the Zoom link, Mr. Tahir Ahmed, to please change that?
Strange. Oh, I think I found it.
Great, thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
I can hear you now.
Okay, good.
So will we be able to see the conference attendees?
To see conference attendees, you have to go on Zoom channel.
On the YouTube,
so on this channel, people see only each other. Yeah, but this is recorded. So in the end, you could see whole program. So you could see anyone and you can forward the link to anyone that they can watch anytime on their convenient.
Should have also recorded the behind the scenes as well.
Yeah.
What was going on for the first Zoom?
So thank you, Councillor. Kelly Chahal is Deputy Mayor is with her. So thank you very much. And we'll be starting in a few minutes. She's the Councillor of City of Abbotsford, presenting a welcome remarks today. So Councillor, everyone is in right now, almost our speaker panel. And I see also Chief Dr. Robert Joseph is with us now also. So welcome all of you to have all the panel ready to speak.
Did I hear that right, Rizwan? Who's doing the introductory remarks?
The introductory remarks done by our regional president. He'll be joining any minute now.
Okay, perfect.
His name is Naeem Lakhan. I have sent a program. His name is there. It's also available on the website.
Perfect. Sounds good. I thought I was doing that, but I'm pleased to be off the hook.
No, you're doing the welcome remarks. You're doing a greater job.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you're doing the welcome. So we have a Councillor, Kelly Chahal, will be doing the welcome remarks. And afterwards is you. And then our ex-member, RCMP officer, Ali Mirza, had sent a video rather coming on our Zoom channel that we will play. He wanted to say something as a past member. So we did allow him in this time. So these are, after that, we will do introductory remarks by Mr. Naeem Lakhan, the regional president of Ahmadiyya Muslim community, BC. And after that, I'll introduce a moderator, Chief Dr. Robert Joseph. And from there, he's our boss and he's going to control the show.
Okay. So I was planning on just being quite short and sweet. So if...
Good to ask. Yeah.
So Robert, I had asked this of Rizwan earlier, if I could share the screen for my presentation. I want to share a picture about halfway through. So if you if you're running the show, could you make me a co-host at the beginning of my presentation?
Are
Actually,
you,
Tahir is controlling, so he will allow you to go up to. Actually, you have already a feature that you don't need our permission. As a Zoom channel, you could just share the screen.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
But he's ready for you.
Perfect. I promise no pyrotechniques, just one picture.
I'm sure about that.
Pyrotechnics.
I'd be interested to see what those pyrotechnics might look like.
I was about to say, actually. The greatest introduction ever.
Right. Yeah, just what a speaker shouldn't do is overwhelm the introduction.
Yeah.
Nobody remembers what you say. All they can remember is the introduction.
Yeah. It's hilarious.
So I hope everyone is doing well, managing somehow.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
this is a trial time on us as it's getting longer and longer. People are losing a patient. I thought bringing this subject can enhance our faith, and we will know, much more about that. What it means to be pandemic to a religious community.
Yes.
And some of them have shared that how they felt about that and how the positive contribution they can present today that can make better to some people's life, not all of them, because we can reach out to only a certain group of people, and those want to benefit will join this event. It's very interesting on Zoom channel and video, a YouTube channel that I have found out is you find really attendance of the conference after 1 hour of the show, and it start to add up their actually attendance. So by 2 or 3 hours, you exactly find out how many people has watched so far today.
Yes.
Because people are not obliged to sit with us all the time. So traffic is continuously coming and going. So some people will attend for half an hour, some for an hour. And so those are loyal to this event will attend whole event and won't leave. So traffic is keep on coming and going. So when you click YouTube channel that I provided, you will able to find exactly a good real attendance. For example, when we did the Victoria event, Dr. Nelly Drizen, who was with us in the beginning, was looking like 100, but actually when after the ending of the program, it started to add up and it went up more than 400 people. So, and if you click that YouTube channel of Victoria, you will see still adding up because people watch after the program also. It's very interesting, and I thank to Dr. Nelly for her contribution to provide us guideline, because these are program is going to be recorded and posted in on YouTube channel for a while, and we can benefit always this channel. So these programs we have done it right now from starting from Prince George last year in September, move on to Vernon. We call Vernon because even is a virtual event, but we have titled them according to city. And after that, we went on to Victoria, now Abbotsford, and our last event of fall season will be ending with Whitehorse, Yukon, that we were actually hosting the event there year after year. So we will continue. The date is not decided yet for that because the local members of community in Whitehorse are still thinking the good date for them. So hopefully in a day or two, we will decide about Whitehorse conference, and we will keep this dialogue alive, even though in pandemic time everything's became difficult, but virtually made it very easy. So we'll continue that. So I see almost everyone is in with us. I see the regional president also joined us. I saw just a few seconds ago, and he is off his camera, but he'll come back. So time is now exactly 6 o'clock. So I think so. We're ready to go. People are still joining on YouTube, and they will continue to join. I think so we should not
No.
further delay.
Hmm.
As your host,
Okay,
as organizer, I am very much obliged to you for you coming on the Zoom channel, spending your precious time with us. I know the families there are sometimes look like a free doing nothing, but they found many things to do in their life. And they are not just 100% free sitting and doing nothing and will watch only a YouTube channel for us, but they have other things to do it. So we know that their value of time, and we're very thankful. As we regret sometimes we are unable to present you any gift or anything, but I'll remember that when time comes, we will do that our part. We will thank you your contribution to strengthen the interfaith dialogue, your love for this event and other events that you promote together with us. I know most of you for a long time now, uh, and I really, behalf of my community, whole community, cherish your your love and strength for our community. I know sometimes one of you in a panel, when I asked him to help us to promote the event, so he did not hesitate to even post an ad in Abbotsford News. So we, remember all these good things that when you do it together, strengthen the community. As you remember in Abbotsford last year, we had about 350 people gathering in Columbia Bible College. So they also missed this event, and we miss them also that they are greater supporter to us. I consider them our brothers and sisters that who has a love for this event. So thank you very much for their contribution, and I hope they are listening to this program. And next year they'll be much more ready to host this program in their college. And of course, we will support them any way possible that we can. So thank you very much. I'll conclude here opening remarks, and I like to start the program. Now I request Mr. Naveed Mirza to do the blessing ceremony, and after that we will move on for our dignitaries. Those are waiting to deliver welcome remarks.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May peace and blessings of Allah be upon all of you. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Amen. Translation of the surah presented before you. I seek refuge from Satan the cursed. In the name of Allah, the gracious, the merciful. All praise belongs to Allah, Lord of all the worlds, the gracious, the merciful, Master of the day of judgment. Thee alone do we worship, and Thee alone do we implore for help. Guide us in the right path, the path of those on whom Thou hast bestowed Thy blessings, those who have not incurred thy displeasure, and those who have not gone astray. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. Naveed Mirza is a youth leader of Abbotsford chapter. And now I request for welcome remarks. So, Councillor Kelly, can you come on a video now? Okay, all right. I know you have so many things to do it, and I really thankful to you for taking time out. So Kelly Chahal is a councillor of City of Abbotsford, a long-time city worker from in many areas that she has been working. I know her for some time, and we have built up a strong relation that can build a better Abbotsford and a better community. So I cherish her work and her contribution, her dedication for City of Abbotsford. May God bless you. Now I request you to deliver Deputy Mayor, Councillor Kelly Chahal, welcome remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Rizwan, for those kind words. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here tonight, but also thank you for organizing and continuously organizing these conferences, which bring people together so we can have some harmony in our community. And these are difficult times. We have so many questions. And where is God during pandemic suffering will be discussed tonight. And I am looking forward to hearing the various views you have. You have such a diverse panel. And thank you once again for continuously trying to improve communication and understanding with all our diverse community. Thank you, Rizwan.
Thank you very much, Councillor, for your kind word and support for interfaith dialogue. Now I request my good friend, President Jamie Vermeulen, to please deliver welcome remarks. I really thankful to his community for their support. I know the first event when I hosted in your church, we had about 450 attendants, and everyone was shocked. And a regional president came also there to join the event. At that time, he was a president of the Metro Vancouver, the Greater Metro Vancouver, and he saw from his own eyes that such a good attendance and support that you guys done. Since that, I have very good memories, and I welcome you to deliver welcome remarks.
Thank you. It's funny how over the years, we've really come to appreciate and admire each other. And I think so much of you and very much appreciate the hard work that you put in to bring us all together. I'm honored to welcome everyone to the 14th World Religion Conference. And I'm Jamie Vermeulen, president of the Abbotsford, BC stake of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I wanted to in particular thank all the organizers, all those who put together posters and advertised and reached out to all of us and set up speaking topics. And I mean, it's a tremendous amount of work. And in particular, Rizwan Pirzada, who's a great leader at bringing so many faiths together. I also wanted to thank tonight's speakers who've prepared messages for us this evening. In particular, I think this topic is very timely. Where is God during pandemic suffering? And as much as this pandemic has been hard, we've also found many blessings throughout this trial. We look forward to hearing from each of our speakers this evening and pray for their success as they deliver their messages this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your kind word. Now we have a video presentation from RCMP officer Ali Mirza, who was also a member of Abbotsford chapter. He would like to add on to this pandemic suffering and his feeling. So now I request, because rather coming on live on video, he thought to do video presentation, and I know he's watching this program. So let's hear Ali Mirza, what he'd like to say to us. Mr. Tahir, can you please play the video?
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. My name is Ali Mirza, and I'm a member of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. I have 3 minutes, and I have quite a bit to share, so I am just going to cut short and read. And I hope that it relays the message that I hope to relay. I have served alongside Rizwan as a General Secretary of the Abbotsford branch of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Together we hosted several of these conferences in the past, and I'm a huge proponent of their overall value to our greater community composed of various backgrounds, including our various cultures and faiths. To that end, I'm deeply honored to say a few words on this very relevant and important topic. The pandemic caught us all by surprise. We haven't come across such a deadly crisis in our lifetimes, The question was, this just can't happen to us with all the knowledge of the modern science working in our favor, but it has. So we looked for answers. To that end, how do we deal with life and why did this happen? Scientifically, there may be any number of reasons. However, those of us who believe in God in any fashion or form would possibly even question why God allowed this to happen or why God isn't intervening. Personally speaking, in August of 2019, I suffered a spinal cord injury in a motorcycle accident. I had lost all motor control below my waist, losing the use of my legs. So by the time the pandemic hit us in Canada, I was already undergoing a bit of a personal challenge. I've always had a decent belief in God and have sought God's help. At other times in my life, of course, He has helped me in more ways than I could have imagined. Sometimes the help would come immediately, and at other times it would be on another time, which would actually turn out to be the more appropriate time, leaving me to reflect that God knows best. That belief in the Almighty allowed me to resolve the occurrence of my injury by recognizing that God has saved me from a much more severe injury or possibly even death, and that I have been blessed even in that situation. My arms and upper body were strong, and my brain was fully functional after the injury, whereas others suffering similar injury aren't nearly as fortunate, so I was already ahead. My positive thought process has resulted in much more positive outcomes already, and they continue. For example, my time at the rehab center was cut short from the estimated 4 to 6 months to less than 2 months. I was already driving on my own within 4 months of my injury. While I still didn't have use of my legs at the time, I was well on my way to recovery with limited motion, returning to my legs against all odds, and that's continuing right now. The doctors had told me forget about gaining the use of your legs, but I told them one thing. I said, just tell me what I need to do to get better and leave the rest to me and my God. Scriptures say God doesn't test you beyond your capacity, and I believe that wholeheartedly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ali Mirza, for sharing your thoughts with us. May God bless you and enable to recover as quick as possible. He was a very positive contribution to us when he was in Abbotsford, now lives in Ottawa. So thank you. Now I request Regional President, Mr. Naim Lakhan, leader of our community for BC region. Under him, there are a few chapters that flourishing right now. I request him to do the introductory remarks, and then after that, I'll introduce the moderator and Dr. Chief Robert Joseph. So you can be ready in 3 minutes. Okay, Mr. Naim Lakhan, Regional President, is your mic.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the gracious, the merciful. Assalamu alaikum. May peace be on you. Dear brothers and sisters, we are very fortunate and blessed to live in a country and a society where different faiths can freely and peacefully exchange their ideas and present their point of view. On behalf of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, I welcome you all. This event is a continuation of an initiative taken by the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, may peace be on him. In 1895, he invited the representatives of all the major faiths for an interfaith conference in his hometown of Qadian in India. A conversation and dialogue regarding various faiths can provide us with a new perspective and can make us more insightful to the world around us. The guidelines of this event restrict the presenters from criticizing any other faith. Presenters are requested just to give their own faith's perspective on the topic and then leave it to the audience for for any takeaways or any comparative analysis. Though we sometimes hear about them through the media, but many of us do not normally get a chance to know and learn about the other faiths from their own sources. So there's that special opportunity tonight, and I'm looking forward to an exciting and informative evening. And thank you very much for your time and effort in attending this 14th World Religions Conference hosted by our Abbotsford chapter. May God bless you all. Thank you so much. Now I would request Rizwan Pirzada to please introduce the moderator for tonight's event. Mr. Rizwan Pirzada. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Regional President. Now I'll introduce the moderator. Before I do that, I'd like to recognize our another speaker from Hindu perspective, Mr. Srinath Dwivedi, a longtime friend. He is, and he's going to present a Hindu perspective when time comes. The moderator will call, but in the beginning, I did not probably recognize him. I want to do that now. Now, I'd like to introduce our moderator of tonight's event. And I'm honored to have him with us. And we are kind of, I'll say that, a great leader, a good friend. And I so much to say about him. I met him when first time here, and then he traveled to Calgary to attend our national convention. I got to know him more, and his daughter, Shelley Joseph. Very nice people, very positive impact. So Chief Dr. Robert Joseph is a true peace builder whose life and work are examples for personal commitment. A hereditary chief of sorry, Chief, my pronunciation of tribe. Forgive me for that. Please do correct me when you start the moderator. Gwa and First Nation. Chief Joseph has dedicated his life to bringing the differences brought about the intolerance, lack of understanding, and racism at home and abroad. His insights into the destructive impacts these forces can have on people's lives, families, culture, were shaped by his experience with the Canadian Indian residential school system. Chief Dr. Robert Joseph has a number of honorary doctorate of law degree from the University of British Columbia for his distinguished achievement serving BC and Canada. In 2012, he was presented the Diamond Jubilee Medal by the Right Honorable David Johnson, Governor General of Canada. In 2014, he received the Jack P. Planier Award for Dialogue from Simon Fraser University and honorary doctorate of divinity from the Vancouver School of Theology for his work in reconciliation and renewing relations between Indigenous people and all Canadians. Chief Dr. Joseph has a many contributions to society. He has earned a number of doctorates from the Vancouver Island University, and his contribution is so big that my introduction probably won't able to cover all of. But I would like to recognize that Dr. Chief Joseph is currently the ambassador of Reconciliation Canada and member of National Assembly of First Nation Elder Council. And as I said before, I met with him. I found a marvelous personality. And today we are so much honored that Dr. Joseph is moderating the conference. I'm very happy. I welcome you, sir, and hope that from today and onwards, we'll be able to build so much a greater relation with you. Thank you very much for that. Now, Mike is all yours. You are our chief, and we accept your leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. That's a very generous introduction. I'm really, really honored to be here this evening. I wasted no time, even though I didn't feel qualified to be here. I wasted no time in wanting to be here. because I think all of the people on the screen and those listening are people of care and compassion and love, and seek to better this place, this world. And anytime I meet people like that, I'm just moved beyond measure, and my respect is automatic for all of you. And this gathering this evening, this Zoom, is so appropriate, so timely in this time of COVID, when most of us or all of us have been living in doubt and fear. Some of us even scared to die and wanting so much for it to be over. And because of people here like yourselves who have connections and relationships and the desire to reach out to others, you remind old people like me that we're not alone, that we're never alone. That was one of the biggest fears I ever had in my life, was being alone and had nobody cared. And until I had an epiphany one day, and God, Allah, said to me, I love you, and you're a part, and the epiphany was seeing the universe. And he said, I love you, and you're a part of this, all of this. I had little hope in my life. Most of it was darkness and futility. And then I began to meet people like yourselves all across the region. Sometimes I even went to far away places and met with dozens and dozens, and once in a while, hundreds of people who had faith like you do, people who had conviction, people who practiced love in their lives. And so that's why I never hesitated to be here this evening. Something caught my attention. Let me share it with you for just a moment. When I read, where is God in pandemic suffering? I thought about in the reverse as well, and I asked where God is in pandemic suffering. And I think if you're the kind of people I think that think the way I think you think, you're going to move from that question, where is God in this pandemic suffering, to the other side of the equation, and be able to share with us where God is, a forgiving God, a compassionate God, caring God, a healing God, a God of power that can change our lives and inspire us to take control and do what it is that we can do to celebrate our lives, to hold each other up, to lift each other. So I'm really, really honored to be here. And I'm really anxious to hear the speakers, to hear all of their perspectives. So maybe the first thing I'll do is just go over those 4 rules really briefly. Each speaker is required to speak for 10 minutes only, 10 minutes. So remind yourself of that. It's courtesy, it's caring about the other speakers too, because they have something to share as well. And we want to hear from all of you. And you're expected to speak on the topic from your religious perspectives, philosophical and religious traditions, and holy books. And speakers are not to make any comparison with other faiths, and only speak with reference to their own faiths. And that's part of the reason I wanted to be here. I wanted to learn more about all the faiths that we have, because they're all valid, they're all legitimate, they all have the same message that we are on. We say in Reconciliation Canada, Nimwiyut, we are all one. And one of the things that this pandemic has already started to teach us is that we think now more of each other, and that we are one, we're in this together. If we don't do what we're supposed to do, we're going to be in real trouble. So it's really important. And then speakers are requested to be present during the entire conference and be available for, well, I'm not sure if there's going to be Q&A, there may be time. There may be so many good things that we're going to be hearing. And if we do the full 10 minutes of all of the speakers, who knows? We'll let the process take care of itself. So I think I'm going to start now by introducing the first speaker, and there will be times when I won't be able to read the whole resume because in the interest of time, right? So the first speaker we're going to hear from today will be someone speaking from the Baha'i perspective, Ms. Afrouzeh Bahraini. Afrouzeh Bahraini was born in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, to a Baha'i family. He was always encouraged to seek truth wherever Afrouzeh can find it and study the depths of other religions. This lesson has increased my appreciation for religions because they shape us as human beings. He's currently working at the Archway Community Services to the capacity of an immigrant youth support worker. I introduce you now to Mr. Afrouzeh Bahraini.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Joseph. Thank you. One, I have to say that despite all the issues that we're facing, the fact that we've found different avenues to come together is truly a demonstration of how human beings, they find ways to solve problems. So I think we can pat ourselves on the back for that. Is my voice coming through okay?
Very, very loudly, very nice.
Awesome, thank you. I understand that this question is quite sensitive, and that individuals themselves are currently going through issues that require particular attention, and I empathize with the fact that people are going through this. It's affecting all of us, and we need to understand that there's a question we need to answer, and that's how do we tackle this issue? So I've broken down my presentation that I would like to deliver today into 3 particular points. And I hope that I am understood in the sense of wanting to grab humanity's attention towards finding an action plan. So first off, I would like to start off with the quote from Epicurus, who says that, "Is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Then he is not omnipotent. Is he able, not willing? Then he's malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then where comes the evil? Is he neither able nor willing? Then why call him God?" You see, in the world of the critics or the atheist or the secular or anything, this is probably the most viable argument in the sense of saying, why is God inactive in our society? Why don't we see God, his dynamism, as explained in the holy books of the past? So this question is very prevalent among us of how could God let X happen? And X could be replaced with tsunamis, hurricanes, but we have to understand there's a spectrum. And from the spectrum of things we can replace that X with, baldness and paper cuts are involved as well. So how could God let that happen? So blank statements are said with the absolute good intention, in the sense of saying that, well, what's the solution here? Like in statements such as, it's only hurdles or grass is greener on the other side. They're truly said with good intention, but we have to find a solution. We have to find an action plan. And if we place our faith in these blank statements, then we're not actually doing what we're supposed to be, what we're made to do. So if this is the height of, the degree of the faith that you have, then well, good luck to you. But the fact that we're all here together just goes to show that we're trying to find ways beyond blank statements. So I would also like to say that, acknowledging that there's an actual problem doesn't mean that we have to automatically take the opposite camp's perspective. That by saying that, if there's an anomaly, that therefore we have to succumb and say there's nothing that can be done. That's definitionally and functionally pessimism. And how do we maintain optimism while trying to find this action plan? So how do we tackle this issue? And when we look at history has produced individuals like Confucius, Jesus Christ, Karl Marx, all of these concerned souls who have addressed legitimate problems and have provided particular solutions. But we have to understand that if we were to take the pulse of humanity right now, what diagnosis would we give? What solution would we find? And in some sense, as a human body, as a human family, what are we going through that allows us to say that, this requires attention or that requires attention? So considering that the topic of tonight is the pandemic, it's important to ask that, if the pandemic is something that we're suffering from, then how are we to find a way out? So the world has tons of problems, and it's quite heavy. And as I said before, the spectrum necessarily needs to be understood, that it actually exists, the spectrum of suffering. And what's also interesting is that the argument structure for all of them, from famine and lack of education to tsunamis and hurricanes, from rotting milk and paper cuts, the argument structure is the same, because we are still able to ask, where is God during all of these problems? And it becomes odd to specific individuals when they start looking at the pattern of the questions. Like they ask the question, where is God? Why question God's existence during these, as they go down the spectrum, all the way from famine to like paper cuts. The argument structure is the same, but we can't necessarily ask that, and it becomes more odd when we say that. So we have to find a way and understand that, well, hey, if this is something that is a reality that we have to tackle with, then is it worth living on a barren moon where there's nothing there, no beauty, total silence, or we involve ourselves in the idea that this is reality, and that we have to strengthen ourselves, become more stable in the reality that is naturally unstable. So my next point is the idea of suns, snow, and seas. And why I title it that way is because, when we look at winter, for example, the idea of snow, winter has poetically mean death for centuries. It's this idea that everything just stops, everything's utter silence. And when we look at history, as a result of how heavy death has been an impact on humanity, children have died, livestock is lost, and a whole bunch of these things go through. But do we attribute objectivity of evil towards snow? Well, we don't, right? So then what are we supposed to do to tackle it? Well, humanity has. And now when we look at how we deal with snow, if you look out your window in the December month, people are doing tobogganing, having hot chocolate. So we've overcome that particular suffering. So much so that we involve these pictures of snow inside our calendars and so on. So it's become more palatable in some sense, whereas centuries before, it meant the death of our children. So humanity is now going through this maturity phase, where we're actually understanding that, well, hey, if maturity is something that's a part of our identity, then we are becoming something, and what that is stronger. So I would have to say that not only are these problems that we're dealing with and have overcome been horrendous problems in the past, but is this pandemic also equivalent in weight to the snow of winter, to the heat of a desert, that humanity itself tackled with and had no idea how to solve it and overcame it? So is this something we can overcome as well? Is a very good question we can ask. As a person who likes going to the gym, I really like going in and understanding how much I can lift weights and make sure that I'm not injuring myself. So I have to understand that if I am going to strengthen myself in this gym, I can't just walk up to the 100-pound weight and think that I'm going to lift it. I need to be able to strengthen myself. I have to be able to overcome barriers. I have to understand that there is pain involved. And if I remove myself from this idea that there's pain involved in sculpting beauty, then again, I ask you the question, is a barren moon sufficient? And to be honest, if I had to choose between the darkness of a barren moon, where there truly is no beauty and there is utter disappointment, I would have to say that I would rather choose the world in which I stand with brothers and sisters of my human family, and to identify problems together, and to say that, well, what can we do to solve them? What we can put aside our differences and understand that there are issues that we can deal with. So I would like to raise this question as a thought experiment for you. Is this idea of keeping the world the way it is right now, but at least individually contributing it, so much so that we can encourage others to contribute to our communities so it becomes a better place, is that juice worth the squeeze? Because if it is, then doing the opposite means that we have succumbed to this idea of apathy, of not doing anything. And the death toll of human apathy far supersedes snow, tsunamis, hurricanes. So we have to understand that as human beings, we are born into a world where we're meant to be strong. And if you had a chance to stand before God and to show him the life you lived with the gift of life he gave you, and God showed you the life you could have lived, what would you see? And could that regret be fulfilled now, so that when you do actually do that, when you do present your life as a legacy that you've lived, like what would you do? And in some sense, this pandemic presents the human family an opportunity. As much as it is a crisis, there is a victory that we need to find. And this balance of the cycle of crises and victories has been a part of our human identity that won't stop. Because if we really want to find the height of humanity, we have to understand that this is truly the path that human beings necessarily need to go. So I would like to leave on that, and hopefully it all made sense. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was very thoughtful. You were about 2 minutes over, but that's pretty good.
I apologize. My apologies.
Okay, well, move along. That was really good. I'm pretty sure that we all heard, nonetheless, all of those ideas that will give us some sense of moving in some direction to respond in our own ways. So we're going to ask for a Christian perspective now, and it'll be from the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, Mr. Brody Diarmid. Brody is serving a full-time 2-year mission for the church for the entire 2-year duration. He taught people about Jesus Christ and how to draw closer to him. Brody has many other opportunities for service within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Since that time, serving has helped him understand the importance of assisting others and has caused others to recognize the blessings received. So, Brody, we'll hear from you. I can't see the names exactly.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the introduction. And just a quick clarification, I'm not currently serving a 2-year mission full-time for my church. I did that several years ago, but it was a great experience nonetheless when that happened, but I do have opportunities for part-time service now. I didn't realize there were going to be 4 strict rules, and so I see we've got tough enforcement, and I'm going to do my best to follow all 4. Although I fear I may break one, and so I'll leave it to you to see if I do. And if I do, please let me know.
Oh yeah, you got to meet eye contact, by the way.
I'll start by talking about the butterfly. And the butterfly is an amazing creature. It starts life emerging from its egg as a caterpillar. With a voracious appetite, the caterpillar eats and grows and multiplies in size. Once fully grown, the caterpillar encases itself in a hard shell and becomes a chrysalis. Inside its hard shell, the caterpillar grows and changes, and once ready, emerges as a butterfly. The butterfly is a beautiful and incredible creature, and I am sure most of us have at one time or another watched as a butterfly flittered past and we admired its beautiful markings. Could you imagine trying to appreciate the butterfly for everything it is if you only saw it in its chrysalis state? A hardened shell with a dull color, the chrysalis is hardly worth noticing in and of itself. However, when you understand the entire life of the butterfly, then you can fully appreciate the magnificence of the chrysalis. In addition, when you understand the journey it has taken to become a chrysalis and what it will become when it leaves its hardened shell, the importance of this stage of life becomes even more apparent. Several years ago, while on a family vacation to Vancouver Island, my young son and I went to Butterfly World in Coombs. Many of you might be thinking that taking a very young and energetic boy to a butterfly greenhouse is a recipe for disaster, and I certainly was taking a risk. However, my son was enamored by the butterflies. While he enjoyed seeing the butterflies, his favorite thing to do was to watch the chrysalis that were on display. The chrysalis were protected behind a glass wall, and my son stood there for 10 to 15 minutes just staring at them. He knew what was occurring inside the cocoon and was hoping to catch a glimpse of a new butterfly as it emerged from the hardened shell. Similar to the life of a butterfly, our existences have more than just one phase of life. In the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we believe that we lived before we were born, and we also believe in an existence after this life. Having this understanding puts our earthly experiences into proper context and gives us greater appreciation for what we encounter in this life. In a book of scripture called Abraham, we read about our life before this world. These verses read, "Now the Lord had shown unto me, Abraham, the intelligences that were organized before the world was. And among all these there were many of the noble and great ones. And God saw these souls that they were good, and he stood in the midst of them. And he said, These I will make my rulers. For he stood among those that were spirits, and he saw that they were good. And he said unto me, Abraham, thou art one of them. Thou wast chosen before thou wast born." Further, in the book of Jeremiah from the Old Testament of the Bible, we read, "Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee. And I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations." We may not remember our premortal life, but the few things we do know can give us assurance that our loving Father in heaven is aware of us, has a plan for us, and has sent us here to earth for a very wise and important purpose. I testify that God knows each of his children. He loves them and wants the best for them. Following our premortal lives, each of us was born, receiving our mortal bodies and given the gift of mortal life. In the Book of Mormon, a prophet named Alma taught about our purpose in life. He said, "Therefore this life became a probationary state, a time to prepare to meet God." One of the ways we prepare to meet God is by experiencing challenges, suffering, and hardships. Although unpleasant, they are part of the refining experience that can bring us closer to our Father in heaven. After this life is when we can realize our full potential. Like the butterfly emerging from the chrysalis, we will have the opportunity to become all that God wants us to become, all that he has seen we can be. In this glorious and glorified state, we will have complete appreciation and understanding why our earthly existence followed the course it did. With an understanding where we came from and where we are going, we can better appreciate our experiences in this life. As we endure suffering during our mortal lives, one of the greatest challenges can be finding the meaning of our suffering. The great psychiatrist, philosopher, and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl spoke on this very topic. Having survived the Holocaust, this man knew more about suffering than most. His thoughts and opinions have a great degree of authenticity and perspective given his earthly experience. In his book, Man's Search for Meaning, he recounts a counseling session he had with a man whose children had died during the Holocaust. The man, who was a rabbi, was wrought with anguish over the loss of his children. To quote from the book, "Now the true reason for his despair came to the fore. He explained that his children, since they died as innocent martyrs, were thus found worthy of the highest place in heaven. But as for himself, he could not expect, as an old sinful man, to be assigned the same place. I did not give up, but retorted, "Is it not conceivable, Rabbi, that precisely this was the meaning of your surviving your children, that you may be purified through these years of suffering, so that you too, though not innocent like your children, may become worthy of joining them in heaven? Is it not written in the Psalms that God preserves all your tears? So perhaps none of your sufferings were in vain." This story was incredible to me. In a place where there was so much misery and suffering, Viktor Frankl was able to find purpose and meaning and give the gifts of hope and faith. As we consider our suffering or the suffering of those around us, it is imperative that we find a meaning or purpose to that suffering. To find such enables us with courage, strength, faith, and hope. As we experience hardships, trials, and suffering, we can either become strengthened or hardened from the experiences, but the choice is ours. In the Book of Mormon, much of the text is dedicated to the interactions of two main groups of people, the Nephites and the Lamanites. While there are periods of time where the two groups are peaceful, much of their coexistence was spent at war. A great prophet historian named Mormon observed the following: "But behold, because of the exceedingly great length of the war between the Nephites and the Lamanites, many had become hardened because of the exceedingly great length of the war, and many were softened because of their afflictions, insomuch that they did humble themselves before God, even in the depth of humility." Different people enduring the same challenges responded in different ways. How we respond to our own personal challenges is up to us. Our current prophet, President Russell M. Nelson, has advised that God does not spare us sorrow, but heals our hearts and gives us perspective. He further suggests that gratitude has a great healing power and can help us overcome the challenges of this life. There are many scriptures which indicate that this is true. In the Old Testament book of Psalms, we read, "It is a good thing to give thanks unto the Lord. Let us come before his presence with thanksgiving, and oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy endureth forever." In the New Testament in the Bible, Jesus Christ offered thanks many times, such as before raising Lazarus from the dead, before multiplying the loaves and fishes, and during the Last Supper. We can look to these ancient examples as ways of improving our lives today. Upon reflection, many of us probably consider the more challenging periods of our lives to be the times we grew the most. When we are stretched and challenged, we can rely on the mercy of Jesus Christ to strengthen and enable us to not just endure challenges, but to grow and develop because of them. To again quote Viktor Frankl, "What reasons have we to envy a young person? For the possibilities that a young person has, the future which is in store for them? No, thank you, we will think. Instead of possibilities, I have realities in my past. Not only the reality of work done and of love loved, but of the sufferings bravely suffered. These sufferings are even the things of which I am most proud, though these are things which cannot inspire envy." As we view our existence in its totality, including our life before this earth and the life that is to come, our experience here on earth takes greater purpose. In searching for meaning in our suffering, choosing to learn from our experience, and offering thanks for the blessings God has given us, we will be better positioned to gain what God has prepared for us. Like the caterpillar, we too can emerge as a beautiful creature, realizing the full potential of what God sees within each of us. Of this I testify in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. That was very good. It really resonated with me. One time, a long time ago, when I was a young boy, and I was living in a village that I grew up in, and it was the only culture around, and everybody spoke the language that I belonged to. And this old guy was standing up at the front of the ceremonial house. We call it big house, others call it long house. And I remember one of the things he said in his speech, and it was this. He said, "We are more than driftwood. We have purpose. So it resonates through all of the traditions, I think, that when God created us, we have a purpose that we may not know in the first instance, but it's our duty to try to discover it as we move along the spectrum of life. Thank you. The next speaker, we're going to get an Islam perspective. Imam Umar Khan is going to speak to us. Umar was raised in Toronto and New York as a child and spent his adolescent years in Calgary. After graduating from high school in Calgary, he attended Jama'at Ahmadiyya Missionary Training School of the Community in Ontario, which is a 7-year program. He graduated from there in 2012 and then was given the opportunity to serve as a trainee missionary in Sierra Leone, West Africa. Sir.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph, for that introduction. I start with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of Allah, the Gracious, the Merciful. I thought maybe I'd help you guys by not getting bored of looking at me. So I do have a presentation I would like to share with my brothers and sisters. And hopefully you could see that on your screen. And to get right into it, the question that we have is definitely a tough question. Where is God during the pandemic suffering? So what I did is I thought maybe, I'd split this topic up into 2 different sections. The first one is the concept of suffering itself. It's a common question that many people have. So the first few slides, I'll just concentrate on that and what the Islamic perspective is. And then towards the end, I will try my best to answer this difficult question. Where is God during the pandemic suffering? So I'm going to start with a little story that talks about why suffering sometimes is not necessarily always bad. And this is a story that was from a Muslim scholar. And just to exemplify why suffering is needed sometimes, he gave the story of a lamp which had oil and water. And the oil and the water had a little discussion between themselves. And the water, they had a little argument. And the water addressed the oil and said, "You are heavier and dirtier than I, yet despite your thickness, you float up above me. For I am pure and refined and used for cleaning, but I still remain below you. Why is this so?" The oil responded, he said, "that you have not experienced even minutely the degree of difficulty that I have endured. It is for this reason that I have attained this lofty position. There was a time when I was sown in the earth, I remained hidden and was humbled. Then by the will of God, I began to grow, and had not grown much before I was cut down. After great pains, I was then refined. Further still, I was ground in an oil press, whereafter I was transformed into oil, and finally set aflame. After all this, was I not to attain a lofty position?" So my dear brothers and sisters, the question about suffering is that I want to look at it from a different angle, is that suffering is actually a big reason for human advancement and progress. Now, if you think about, the span of, mankind and human life, if we were to take out suffering, progress would become stationary and stagnant. There would be no advancement, no progress. Another thing about suffering is that suffering actually helps to recognize and appreciate joy and happiness. Without suffering, we wouldn't be able to actually recognize what happiness and joy is. And also, suffering brings out the best in a person, feelings of humility and gratefulness, compassion towards others, and also recognition and turning towards God. I'm going to share with you some verses of the Holy Quran as to the wisdom behind suffering. The first verse that you see on your top left, God says that who, meaning God, has created death and life that he might try you, which of you is best in deeds, and he is the mighty, the most forgiving. So the Holy Quran presents, this concept, this principle that through difficulties and trials, it brings out the best in an individual. And the Holy Quran teaches the concept of advancing towards progress versus staying stagnant and, not progressing. And the other verse that you see on the bottom, it says, surely every hour that follows is better for thee than the one that precedes. So this was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad that is, progress is what we as man should try to achieve, whether it's spiritual, secular, any areas of life. So if we look at suffering from that angle, suffering is actually a big deal for why we have actually advanced to the stage that we are today. Now, the thing that I mentioned about appreciating happiness and joy, I'll quote our fourth spiritual leader, may God rest his soul. He said in his book, Revelation, Rationality, Knowledge, and Truth, he said, without the taste of suffering or an awareness of what it means, the feeling of relief and comfort would also vanish. Without an encounter with pain and misery, most certainly joy and happiness would lose all meaning. And I found this very beautiful and interesting because sometimes it's so difficult when we're going through any types of tribulation and trial, but actually without it, we would not be able to actually appreciate and recognize the beauty of happiness and joy in our lives. Also, if we look at different aspects of life, whether it's education, when we see students studying for their medical school, examinations, we look at professionals, doctors, lawyers, engineers, or elite athletes, all of them have been through some type of suffering, whether it's studying or training, 5 a.m. to go run to get their athletic bodies into shape. It's the reason why we see people like Muhammad Ali, Michael Jordan, or different academics and intellectuals, because they went through that suffering to achieve. And, in suffering, I say, how I like that example of a paper cut or somebody, going bald. You need to go through that suffering to achieve progress and advancement. So all the advancements that we see, whether in science, medicine, technology, there is some level of suffering at the root of all this progress. And then moving on, suffering is also a means of showing humility and compassion towards other people. The founder of our community, who we believe to be the promised Messiah, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, he said that when a person is afflicted by some calamity or misfortune, they show immense humility and meekness. And we see this during the pandemic also, where it really humbled a lot of us, thinking that we're from first world countries, this only happens in developing countries. It hit us hard, and it was a very humbling experience that anything, we're still vulnerable to a lot of these calamities. And moving on to the second part now, where I will try my best to answer this, where is God during the pandemic suffering? I'd like to bring your attention to this verse, chapter 39, for verse 50 of the Holy Quran. And when trouble touches man, he cries unto us meaning God here. But when we bestow on him a favor from us, he says, this has been given to me on account of my own knowledge. So in this verse, God is kind of hinting that suffering is also a means of coming closer to God. That God is kind of hinting in this verse that he has a desire through these trials and tribulations that people turn towards him. But at the same time, God also gives us this understanding that once these trials and tribulations are gone, people tend to totally forget him and go back to their old ways. And I don't know if many of you saw, but recently there was a flight from Denver that the engine caught fire. And I found it very interesting when I was reviewing that on CNN, that the people that they interviewed, it was almost 2-3 people in a row. The first thing they said is that we started praying to God. And that's exactly what this verse says, that when difficulties come, people do turn towards God. But then when things get better, they give themselves credit that it was through our effort, not God, but ours, that we were able to get out of this. So, and this is also backed up by a very recent study by Jeanette Sinding Betzin. She's a professor at the University of Copenhagen in Denmark and also an executive director of the Association for Study of Religion, Economics, and Culture. She recently did a study called In Crisis We Pray, Religiosity and the COVID-19 Pandemic. And from her study, she proved that Google searches for prayer rose in response to the COVID-19 crisis. And then again, she goes on to say that the searches on Google for prayer reached the highest level ever recorded during this COVID-19 pandemic. And this shows that man has this inner desire to actually pray when the time is there. But she also mentioned the same thing in the verse, that she did some research that after earthquakes, I find that religiosity increases the most during the following 3 to 6 years after an earthquake. And then she says, then after that, the religiosity falls again. And I'll go back to that verse, is exactly what God is saying in this verse, is that, you know, it's God's way of reminding people of his existence. But when people turn away from him, he does use suffering, trials in the form of disease or natural disasters to call people towards him. Now, I see I'm coming towards the end of my time. I have just one more slide after this. And I found this very interesting while studying the Quran. And I wanted to share this with you because I thought it was relevant to the topic. In chapter 32, verse 22, God says, and most surely I will make them taste of the lesser punishment before the greater punishment, so that they may return to me with repentance. Now, what I understood out of this verse is that it's God's way of kind of shaking up mankind with different types of trials and tribulations to, you know, a wake-up call that stop the injustices around the world, stop sinning and committing evils and different types of crime, you know, to other people, and turn towards him with, you know, seeking forgiveness and righteousness and treating other people with love and compassion. And to be honest with you, it is my own personal understanding, especially from wise words of our spiritual leader, that this pandemic may be that wake-up call of the lesser punishment. And if mankind does not come towards righteousness and stopping injustices around the world, there is quite possibility that we can face something even worse than this pandemic. So I'm going to end with words of our current spiritual leader. He says about the pandemic that it signifies that the world is being admonished to fulfill the rights of their God and fulfill the rights of God's creations. The days of disasters and epidemics remind us to raise our commitment to God and invite the world to recognize and worship their creator. So I see time's up for me, and that's good because I'm done my presentation. Thank you again, everybody, for giving me a few minutes to share my thoughts in religious scriptures. And God bless all of you. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's really interesting. One of the things that I notice, even in my own experience, I'm in touch with the indigenous people in the Lower Mainland and the province, of course. And for some reason, they're much more prayerful at the moment. And they much more want to experience some spiritual experience that normally isn't talked about too much. So this COVID, I think, has actually risen or had our consciousness rise to some degree, where we're thinking differently at the moment and being more mindful and trying to figure it out. So the next speaker is someone who I got to know and had the pleasure of working with a little bit. She's going to talk from the Sikh faith perspective, Ms. Sukhvinder. She was inspired by an ever deepening love affair with Sikhi, the Sikh spiritual path of power of self. Sukhvinder actively works with partners from diverse backgrounds to catalyze positive social change for the greater empowerment of all. She initiated and helped develop the Kirpan accommodation policy for the 2010 Vancouver Olympics. She spearheaded a Sikh engagement with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada and the Walk for Reconciliation. She produced a short film entitled It Matters, the Legacy of Residential Schools. Take it from there, Sukhvinder.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for inviting me here tonight. And I'm going to start, actually, I'm just going to start with sharing, wow, I resonated so much with each speaker. And so I'll start talking about what Sikhi, our teachings, have to say about source. Source is described in so many ways in the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib, our teachings. There is this very rich and diverse language used to refer to source, like beloved, friend, mother, father, amazing deliverer from darkness to light, ocean, air, earth, fire, inspiration, wisdom, joy, love, and many, many, many more. So there's no one word that refers to source or describes it, because source is a part of everyone and everything. It's vast and amazing. And according to our teachings, only source itself knows its full state and extent. So source exists within each of us. And in times of suffering, it's our choice to open the door wide and connect with source, or like slam it shut and go into that fetal position and feel alone. Source never goes away. Source is always there. And it's up to us to open that door or not. That's our free will and our choice. So I wanted to touch base just a bit also on the role of suffering from a Sikh perspective. I mean, according to our teachings, suffering is a natural part of life. It is where we grow. Well, if we choose to, again, right? Do we choose to open up and grow during this time? Or do we choose to, again, go into that fetal position and just sort of like grit our teeth and hope it passes us by, and hope it's over soon? So suffering comes and goes in our life. We can have personal suffering, we can have family suffering, we can have community suffering, and we're currently in a global suffering, right? And sufferings are opportunities that, like, they're refining fires that help us hone ourselves, that help us grow, help us expand, and help us think outside that box, be inspired to do things differently, to look at, well, what's not working that's leading to this suffering? And so what do we need to either invent or grow or design or let go, right? To make room for something else. So as Sikhs, we have many tools that help us step into the discomfort of suffering and stay connected with source. And the one I'm going to talk about tonight is Chardi Kala, expansive resilience. So it's one tool, because we don't have time to go into all of them. And so as we experience suffering, expansive resilience helps us to continue to expand and stay connected with source rather than contracting and isolating ourselves. It's this ever increasing upward movement through dark times. And so it's based on this like deep-seated belief and trust that the source we are all a part of will support us to make it through this darkness, that as long as we are open, what we need or who we need will show up. And it's making a conscious choice to deliberately be joyous and to help others in the face of darkness, that doing this will push us forward and make us stronger. And so over this course of this last year, I have to say many Sikhs that I've spoken to, they have focused on Chardi Kala, on expansive resilience. And with, having been doing interfaith and of this for now decades, I have to say many of my, friends from other faiths, they've been doing the same thing. They call it different words, but they've also been doing expansive resilience. They've actively been exploring what are activities or habits that they need to cultivate to be resilient, to have the capacity to move through this difficult time, to have the resources to do so. So what I noticed was, there's a couple of different sort of categories of this activities and habits that people have been cultivating. And I'll just start with the physical, because the physical body matters. And so people have been focusing on physical exercise, going for walks, or they've converted their garages to gyms. They're doing aerobics at home. There's so many gyms are now offering their, classes online. And so we have been shifting as a species and figuring out ways how we can still stay physically healthy, because that's a big part of resilience, right? Our body needs to be nourished and taken care of. And then people have been also focusing on their nutrition. I don't know how many vitamin D conversations I've had. It's like, hey, we're heading into winter. What are people doing to help them make sure they're not getting more sick during this time? Because yes, COVID is something that we are dealing with. So people have been focusing on their nutrition. They've been focusing on supplements and figuring out ways to nourish the body. And then they're also looking at how to nourish the soul, how to nourish our spirit. So many people have shifted to prayer practices. For some, it's an individual practice, but for many, it's been collective practices. And they just switched it to online. So it's like, hey, you're in your bubble, I'm in my bubble, but we can still pray together. We can still find human connection, right? Because if we cut ourselves off, that's another way we're cutting ourselves off from source, because source exists within each other. And as we connect with each other, we're building that connection with source as well. So prayer, that's been a big part, and so many different ways of praying, and people of different faiths coming together to pray. And then they're also fostering connections, right? I've listened to people who have definitely done that isolation piece. And it's been like, no, we're supposed to do physical distancing, not social distancing. You do not need to be emotionally and socially, isolated. We just have to now be creative, figure out ways to get our human connection. And so one of the ways that people have been doing this is service to others. I want to share with you, we have come together as interfaith communities to work together for the well-being of all of us, right? I know when, the lockdown started in March and Vaisakhi was, coming up in April for us, so many Sikhs, were now at home and realized that there were a lot of seniors and there were a lot of people who were trapped in their homes and they couldn't get groceries, couldn't get their prescriptions. And so a whole bunch of Sikhs, of which many were international students and immigrants, came together and they were delivering meals. There were 3 gurdwaras in Surrey last year that were each doing anywhere from 600 to 800 meals per day. So it was about an average approximately of 2,000 meals per day between the 3 that was being delivered every day. And then moving from there, lots of people just kept going, well, this is just continuing on. And so what can we do? So I want to share with you that we have been building, and by we, I mean just human beings. We've been building better connections of sharing resources and supporting one another. For instance, this Christmas in December, there was a toy drive done by Guru Nanak's Free Kitchen. And a good portion of those toys was taken over to Stalo Service Agency in Chilliwack, which was then shared with many First Nations. And it was, the volunteers originally thought, no, we can't do the toy drive. And then somewhere came that energy of, no, we need to do this. And we just need to figure out how to do it safely. How do we build in COVID protocols so that we don't get each other sick, but that the children don't miss out? And so, yeah, hundreds and hundreds of toys were gathered that in December and then shared. And then a program by Guru Nanak's Free Kitchen called Food Seva was also developed, began in October, and up till now it's done over 100,000 pounds of food, which is the equivalent of approximately 75,000 meals. And this is a multicultural interfaith effort. There are Sikhs and Muslims and Hindus and Christians who have been coming together multiple times during the week to deliver food to shelters in the Lower Mainland and again, First Nations in the Fraser Valley. And we're talking like truckloads of food that are being delivered in the Fraser Valley. And then I want to share, there was this moment of like a few weeks ago where it felt like, wow, we've been squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, and COVID decision makers are saying there's not an end in sight. They just need us to be stronger. And there was this feeling of emptiness, of the buckets being empty. And so conversations began. I know I reached out to friends and family and said, hey, I don't know how much more I have to give. So I need to figure out a way to fill our buckets. And we've come together and we've decided to do this Cultivate Resilience 2021. And saying, listen, April's a holy time for so many faiths and cultures, right? We have Passover, Easter, Vaisakhi, Ramadan, just to name a few. There's many more. And resilience is such an important part. So what if we all got together? What if we did resilience dinners? What if we did resilience outdoor service projects? What if we had a resilience scavenger hunt? What if we did something to build deeper connection, laugh with one another? And so that's a project that's being developed by a whole group of people as we speak. And so I'm going to invite everybody listening, if you have time and if you'd like to help organize or be involved, please check out skvsignup.com. That's S for Sam, K for Kilo, V for Victor, signup, signup.com. And you can sign up to help us out with these projects. So Cultivate Resilience 2021, we're going to fill up our buckets. And so I share with you resilience, that in all this hard work, we can have these beautiful relationships, and together we're going to make it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sukhvinder. I really like those last words. They're action words, and I understand them, and I can jump on that and say, gee, I want to do that. And we need a little more of that as well. I really appreciate that everybody on the screen is well educated and operate probably at a higher consciousness than ordinary people like myself. And we don't get all of the gist of what you're saying because we've never spent much time in that world. But when you come to those words where you say, jump in the water, I can understand that, right? So that's really cool. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Alan Dorkson, Christian Anglican. From a Christian Anglican perspective, he'll tell us, he'll share some information with us. Father Alan has served the parish of St. Matthew's since 2011. Over the years, he has served in several dioceses in Western Canada and in multiple parishes. He loves conversations and would welcome a phone call or an email. Better yet, a chat in his study or at a local coffee shop. His passion is the development of spiritual community around the mystery of God, as expressed in the best of the great tradition and the ongoing development of human knowledge. He has found the Anglican expression of Christian community particularly conducive to this passion. Alan.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. Can you guys all hear me good? Great. I think that was a yes. It's great to be with you all tonight. But you know, by this time last year, I was sure getting hungry. And I miss the food and fellowship that we could have together after all the speaking is over. I want to thank you, Rizwan, for the invitation to speak. I also want to acknowledge that today we are on the shared traditional ancestral territory of the Stalo Nation. The Stalo people are the people of the river and have lived in the Fraser Valley for 10,000 years or so. And it's for that reason that we acknowledge the traditional territory in which we reside. Jesus's disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" "Neither this man nor his parents sinned," said Jesus, "but this happened so that the work of God might be displayed in his life. As long as it is day, we must do the work of God who sent me." So in the short time that I have, I'm going to approach this very important question, where is God in pandemic suffering, by focusing on the particular aspects of God's work that may be, from the Christian perspective at least, illumined by the particular suffering our world has been experiencing in the past year. And of course, in so doing, I'm also partially speaking, as many of you have already, to the question, where is God in any kind of suffering? For truly our world, its creatures, both human and otherwise, have experienced far worse levels of suffering than we've experienced this past year, however awful it has been, and it certainly has been. To name only one instance out of hundreds, and to stick to the theme of disease, when the smallpox virus was introduced to indigenous peoples, it was responsible for wiping out 90%, 90, of entire civilizations. In just 6 weeks, it is estimated 60% of the Stalo people who live among us died when they contacted Europeans for the first time. The classic Christian position has been that it is not in the nature of God to be involved in the suffering of the world as a spectator, sympathizer, or victim, but that it is God's nature nonetheless to be involved with creatures more intimately than any creature could be involved with any other. So that's a kind of paradox. Paradoxically, again, the classic understanding from a Christian perspective is that God does suffer once God assumes humanity in Jesus Christ, and that it even makes sense to say that God was tortured to death on the cross. So it's entirely plausible to say from a Christian perspective that God is completely separated from the global pandemic as the eternal infinite, and at the same time to bravely say, fully aware of what some might say is outright contradiction, that when we ask the question, where is God in pandemic suffering, it is precisely the word in that points to God's location. That is, God is suffering as those who are suffering, fully embodying the suffering. The Reverend Michael Hare, who serves with the United Church of Canada, sent me a picture yesterday when I was preparing this that I now show you as a slide. So I'm going to just share the screen here. Hopefully I can figure this out. Oh my, where did it go? Ah, yes, okay, so I have to do this first, forgive me. Share this, there we go. All right, can you all see that now? Yes, good. The painter of this is unknown. And of course it plays on the famous artistic theme of the Pietà, the Virgin Mary cradling the dead body of Jesus when he's taken down from the cross, made so famous by Michelangelo. But here, of course, it's various healthcare workers of different age, gender, and background. So where is God in pandemic suffering? Well, literally in it, as the victim, if you will. The Christian message says God is fully invested in the human, and by extension, creaturely journey. Now, am I sharing with you the picture or am I sharing with you my message? I think I'm sharing my message. So I wanted to share with you the picture.
We see the picture.
Oh, okay, you do see the picture. Good. By becoming one with us, even in our suffering, God is, as we say it, all in. And I think the painting captures this brilliantly. But the painting captures not only God's location, but the effects of God's presence with us at this time. As Jesus says in answer to his disciples, this happens so that the work of God might be displayed in this blind man's life. If God is with us in our suffering, what are the particular works of God being displayed right now? Well, we look for these from the Christian perspective through human partnership with God's intentions, precisely because God meets us in Jesus Christ. We look not to a kind of disembodied sense of God's actions, but as many of you have already said, for God's work through people who are committed to furthering our partnership with God. To just note the painting again, if God is all in, we have at this time a whole new appreciation of the phrase, we're all in this together. It has been argued by some that never in human history has there been such a sense of partnership all across traditional divides. We are one in one world. Now, at the same time, we have this experience when we absolutely need to have it, not just for the sake of present safety, which is important, but it is precisely this kind of perspective we will need to foster in the decades ahead if we're to save our precious planet. I see that kind of serendipity as God's work. At the beginning of the crisis, the whole world noticed something. It noticed that we were all slowing down and sheltering in place, and we all noticed that global emissions of CO2 dropped dramatically. For many people, it was the first undeniable evidence that humans were causing the greenhouse gas index to rise. So by simply sheltering in place, humans greatly affected the global atmospheric condition. To put it boldly, and without claiming that God caused the pandemic, I do believe God is using this crisis to help us face the truth of our common situation. Near the beginning of the pandemic, Mark Carney, the former Bank of Canada director and just retired Bank of England director, wrote a piece for The Economist that was shocking. Carney, one of the leading spokespeople for the global banking system and by extension global capitalism, said that economic values must yield to human values, and that for too long it's been the other way around. Well, will this happen? I don't know, but I take Carney's assertion as God's invitation. The world is generally not good at taking God's invitations, but some people are taking this seriously. What has been highlighted is that our economies, our societies as a whole, run on the backs of people who get paid very little, and these are precisely the people who are often in harm's way during the pandemic. So I find it fascinating that in general, the world is starting to understand something that isn't unique to the Christian perspective, but that has been noticed by all careful readers of Jesus' story, the place of the marginalized, the poor, and the outcast. So I don't see, just to finish, that God is blaming anyone for this crisis, but that God is working. And the question to all of us, to the world is, will we work with God and in so doing experience the joy of God working through us? As Jesus said, as long as it is day, we must do the work of him who sent me. So with prayers for all of us in our common partnership and for all who have suffered and are suffering. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was really good. I picked up a few things that were really of interest to me that kind of resonated. I don't get everything that everybody says, and I'm listening really hard. And I guess that's how consciousness grows or knowledge grows. You hear enough people saying the same thing, you're eventually going to learn that. So I really appreciate that. The next speaker will be Rabbi Susan Shamish, and she's going to speak from the Jewish faith perspective. Rabbi Susan Shamish was ordained as a rabbi by Aleph Alliance for Jewish Renewal in January 2017. She holds her BA honorary from the University of Alberta and her Bachelor of Laws degree from the University of British Columbia. As a lawyer and administrative law judge for 30 years, Susan specialized in workers' compensation and administrative law. She is happily retired. She is a happily retired lawyer who lives with her husband, Yom Tov and dog Dulcie, if I get that right, in Vancouver, British Columbia. Take it away, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Joseph. I'd like to begin by thanking the Ahmadiyya Muslim community of Abbotsford for organizing this conference, and Rizwan Prezida in particular. I'm honored to represent the Jewish religion on this important question. Today, we are addressing suffering as a result of the global pandemic of COVID-19. We've lost so much. All of our lives have changed in large and small ways. We've all lost loved ones, social interactions, the ability to gather in our religious communities. We've lost simple things too. Friends and family coming together, unmasked as they hug each other, praying and celebrating holidays together. We need to grieve for everything we've lost, for our isolation, our worry, anxiety, depression, numbness, fear, lost work, lost savings, weddings, graduations, even funerals, the loss of human touch. And we wonder, where is God in all of this loss and suffering? Judaism has many resources for understanding and responding to human suffering, created by our tradition at times of great national catastrophe. From the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 of the Common Era, to persecutions in the medieval era, to pogroms in Eastern Europe in the 19th century, and culminating in the Holocaust during the Second World War. In the Jewish tradition, how can God's justice be understood, justified, or even vindicated in the face of random, apparently unjustified pandemic suffering? Different Jewish themes have been prominent in different historical eras. There's the biblical answer that suffering and misfortune are retribution, punishment for something that the people did wrong. God's justice remains intact because suffering can be accounted for. This response has gone out of vogue, especially since the Holocaust. Even so, it remains extant and is often the first response we hear to suffering. There are those who attribute the communal suffering we are experiencing as a result of COVID-19 to any number of societal sins: ecological degradation, our treatment of animals, gender fluidity, racism, and more. The book of Job shattered this biblical paradigm of divine retribution by presenting the story of a man who suffered extremely for no reason that he or any of his friends could discern. The foundational theology of the book of Job is that human beings are not capable of understanding God and therefore cannot account for God's behavior. Any effort to explain suffering as deserved inevitably leads to a false view, either of the sufferer or of a God. There's another reason from the rabbinic era, an eschatological view, that reward or punishment would come in the future, be it in the world to come or through children. This answer reinstated the belief in God's justice by accepting that our relationship to God is not exhausted by our life experience on earth. Even though we may suffer in this life, God has the opportunity to balance virtue and reward. This approach is most richly portrayed in the Kaddish, the mourner's prayer, which teaches that we respond to suffering not by explaining, but by affirming our conviction that there is an ultimate order of things, and God is at the center. We cannot understand God's purpose, but we affirm our conviction that chaos will ultimately be vanquished. The medieval answer is the notion that God required our help to end or at least alleviate suffering. The answers from the early modern era and in Kabbalah, which is the arm of Judaism, Jewish mysticism, is that repentance, prayer, and acts of loving kindness alleviate suffering. Even though ultimately we cannot understand the existence of suffering in our lives and God's place in it, and we have no power to affect the forces of life and death in the world, we can control how we respond to it. We do that through repentance, prayer, and acts of loving kindness. The contemporary answer is that God does not direct things. Rather, God is the witness inside us, to whose presence we pour out our hearts, and who helps us to understand suffering. This notion is perhaps exemplified best by Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who taught that God may not be able to prevent suffering and suffers along with us, but God can share in our suffering and thus gives us consolation and strength. We don't have to understand suffering or reconcile it with the existence of God. But our rabbinic sages taught that we do find God there, and there is a path to redemption. There's an ancient Jewish idea that through the dark night of suffering, redemption will come. Yerida letzorech aliyah. We go down in the service of coming back up. In the shadow of the pandemic, we stand at the inflection point between the death spiral and the promised redemption. As painful as things are, this will only make tomorrow's redemption sweeter. This story arc stands at the heart of Jewish ideology. Remember that through suffering, redemption will come. There is much Jewish wisdom on survival following suffering. Our ancestors found the strength to lay old worlds to rest and build new ones. The rabbis who escaped the destruction of Jerusalem 2,000 years ago first tore their clothes, cried, screamed, lamented, and mourned for the desolation and destruction. They taught us that a healthy society must grieve. We too must cry and scream and tear our clothes. There has been much loss. The message from our ancestors is to weep. Let the tears flow. But their story didn't end in grief. Our ancestors had the right to walk away defeated and bitter, but they didn't. They found God weeping with them in the devastation. They did not wonder where God was. They knew God was right there with them. Our ancestors cry out to us now that the most courageous thing to do is rebuild. But something new and different. Judaism was thus reborn, a new religion that replaced the temple with synagogues and sacrifice with prayer. The new reality reflected the hard-won lessons from the old. Our rabbis taught us that we must treat this crisis and the opportunity to face the sicknesses and injustices laid bare by this pandemic. We need to cultivate a moral imagination that is big enough to include all of us. We must learn to live responsibly on this planet. We must rebuild our world with love and compassion. This is our opportunity to dream audaciously of the next chapter. This is an inflection point, an opportunity to build anew a society driven by love. Each of us is called to the sacred task of tipping the task toward love. That is where God is in this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, those words. I keep thinking I'm learning, just keep learning as I go through the images of all of you sharing, and knowing that even though I don't get all of the gist of what's being said here, that cumulatively and over time, I'm feeling and discovering some things that you see that most ordinary people don't see. We're not all religious. We're not all taught in the same way. we're not all raised in faith-based ways that create that continuum of learning and shaping your understanding and your attitudes. And I'm just thinking out loud here. I think that we collectively here have to find a way to translate all of those powerful words that I've heard into stories that make sense to people who aren't educated. So I say that with all love and respect, because I think we all need all of those, the healing that you're talking about and the potential for human growth at its zenith. And it can only really come from people with the kind of hearts and minds that you have and the messages that you have that indeed connect us to God. So thank you for those words. The next speaker we'll hear from a Hindu faith perspective. And I hope I get the pronunciation right. Acharya Srinath Dwivedi will be our next speaker. She has 3 master's degrees. Boy, you're really smart. Where are you? Away. Not on this. Oh, there. I mean that. You're really smart. Yeah. He taught in Indian and Canadian universities. He organized and participated in several national and international interfaith peace and literary conferences. He has been actively involved for more than 37 years in interfaith movements in Canada. He is a poet, essayist, literary critic, social activist, and journalist. His 6 books of poems are in circulation and edited 2 anthologies. He writes in English and Hindu languages. He has been featured in major radio talks and television shows. So tell us more, sir.
Thank you very much for your kind words. Namaste, good evening. And I'm very happy to be the part of this conference. I have been, since the Ahmadiyya community started the conferences, I have been with them. And it is nice for Rizwan and Naeem Bhai Sahib, they have invited me this time in this to participate in this conference. There is 2 words in this theme, today's theme. One is God, another is suffering. Before that, I will come to discuss those things. We are scientifically, technologically so advanced. We are talking about we are in 21st century. And this kind of COVID-19 has been so brutal that it has killed millions of people, shattered the economy, halted the travels, closed out the offices, and makes people miserable and helpless across the world. That's a big thing. And this world has not before this magnitude of calamity in suffering, since we are so advanced people. We feel. That is the main thing we have to think in that background, what we suffered, what we are facing about it. However, pandemic is born sudden, but with proper planning and spreading can be controlled. The keywords I will come about God and Hindu Dharma. From a perspective of Hindu Dharma, I'm going to present my views. I don't represent Hinduism, let me tell you frankly. It is so wide, so many scriptures, so many Vedas, so many Puranas, so many school of philosophy and thoughts and all that. That it is very difficult to anyone to claim that he is representing Hinduism. I'm only a Hindu practitioner, and I'm going to talk whatever I have little bit learned and experienced to share with you. A simple definition of dharma, Hindu dharma, we are commonly using the religion word generally, but little bit difference with the word dharma. I will explain to you, which is practiced and helps in all round progress in the world. Dharma is a realization of truth. Truth is one, God is one, and humanity is one. Humanity is one. Ekam, I'm quoting from Veda, Ekam sad vipra bhuta vadanti. Truth is one. But all these scholars, theologians, they have interpreted it differently. We have given different names based on our culture and linguistic backgrounds, name of the Creator, Almighty, Eternal, Divinity, any name. That is not very material thing. But thing is that we are thinking about one. That is the question. The simple definition is one. We would like to understand that what is God. That is the main thing. And what kind of relationship God is having with the creation, with the creature and the God. This is what is the relation between God and man? These questions have been discussed in almost every religion and philosophy, and scholars came with variety of answers. The Hindu school of thoughts mainly put into three divisions. First is dualism, Dvaitvad. Second is non-dualism, Advaitvad. And third is qualified non-dualism, Vishishtavad. The dualism considers that man is a creature and God is the creator. And as such, both are separate to another. The non-dualist regards man is identical with God, and the qualified non-dualist accepts God as a whole, and man is a part of being. This is because all these schools, they have a different kind of scholars have interpreted different kind of relationship. Although they are apparently contradictory, but these can be reconciled. A theologian takes into consideration of creeds, dogmas, and doctrines, and looks for the support of his statement. It is from the standpoint of mystic, one who tries to experience God, that the reconciliation can be found. Modern Hindu saint and realized soul Swami Rama Krishna Paramhans declare that God is not found in books, in libraries, outside our institution, but can be experienced. It is the not only of discussion, but something which you can experience. Every religion or system of philosophy has to address this issue of evil, suffering. Natural evils, tsunami, pandemic, famine, man-made war, genocide, and so on. Why God permits evil when he himself is an embodiment of absolute kindness, absolute compassion, absolute mercy? That is the question. Answers can be placed generally in two categories. First, God punishes us for our sins by delivering famine, war, earthquake, and disease. He creates temptation, either directly or through the agency of devil, to test the virtue. Second, the evil does not exist at all. It has no reality, that is simply a misunderstood of God. The Hindu Vedanta philosophy rejects both views. Vedanta believes that evil in absolute sense is unreal. In the same point of view, the good is unreal also. The absolute reality is beyond purity, beauty, happiness, good and evil, pleasure and pain, success and disaster. Hindu doctrine of karma, deed, action, is doctrine of automatic justice. Our pains and pleasures are the result of our past actions in this and countless previous existences. Karma is what we get, exactly what we earn, and we cannot blame God for our troubles. Karma is no longer an endlessly revolving wheel of pain and pleasure, but a ladder to climb for reaching to the consciousness of reality. We talk about this suffering, and there is also during suffering we think about how Hindu scriptures, Hindu religion has dealt with it. It is the three things which come in when people are community suffering, people are suffering. Then first thing consideration is dan, charity. Charity given one out of duty without expectation of return is considered great. I'm quoting from Gita 17 chapter 20 verses. Giving in charity has many benefits. First, it reduces attachment. Second, it encourages the sense of community and helping one another. And third, it enhances our feeling of compassion and empathy. The Rig Veda suggests that we share of ourselves and share of what we have, share of all our wealth, physical, mental, and spiritual. Second thing is a service. Seva, I'm quoting from the scripture, Seva Parvo Dharma. Service, Seva, service to people is the supreme religion. There is no other religion except on this earth for human beings, and serving to other human beings, it is serving to God. If act to serve others or do not. I'm quoting again, Karanam Paropakaranam Esham Kesam Natovatya. The great sage Vyas said that helping others is punya, virtue, and tormenting others is a pap, is a sin. And especially in time of suffering, we go, believe and worship. We more go towards that thing. And there is one quote in Veda that when we go away from God, from divinity, that is the worst suffering. And we come back to the God, that is the living, that is the life we are dealing with the things. Now I will come to other parts of this. Every religion or system of philosophy has to address this issue of evil. And that I have talked to little bit of that thing. And God punishes us for our sins by delivering these things. But there is one thing about the suffering which is created by the calamities, natural calamities and all that. And there I'm going to deal with that. The Hindu Vedanta philosophy deals with all that thing. And they say that the Indian ancient wisdom depicted in Veda constitutes an environmental ethic and encourages us to see the divine in nature. Hindu view of nature has been clearly enunciated by exhorting to people that the reverence well as the various order of life, including plants, trees, forests, and animals, all are bound to each other within great rhythm of nature. One planet, our planet Earth, is a single living, pulsating entity on which our human race lives, and it has sustained our for countless centuries. The Vedic sage has composed 63 verses related with Mother Earth, and that was written about 1500 BCE. It recognized the unchecked greed and exploitative tendencies might become main cause of environment destruction, interreligious and intercultural conflict. I'm quoting from the Prithvi Sukta. Janam vibhrati bahudha vivachasam nana dharmana prithvi yathayuksam sahasradhara travram siddhva te vidunati. Mother Earth, you are the people, you are the people who belong to different races, practice various religions and spiritual beliefs, and speak different languages like wish fulfilling cow. May you bless us all in thousand-fold manner. Please do not become outraged by our destructive tendencies. On other hand, verse 7 and 59 shower blessings on those who defend our environment. Our environmental greed and unstructured management.
You'll have to wrap up a little quick. We're beyond time.
On the last chapter, last few lines. Hindu believes in supreme divinity, and according to Hindu Dharma, God has created the universe, and everyone, human beings and living beings, the spark of this divinity is living. And because of that thing, living, you will find everywhere, in everywhere, God is there. I would like to conclude that according to Hindu Dharma, as it is said earlier, God is everywhere and everyone. Therefore, God is present in form of nurses, doctors, health service providers, and frontline workers, teachers, etc. God qualities of kindness, mercy, and compassion all are reflected in their tabdi. When this balance in nature is affected, then you will find all natural disaster, diseases, and earthquakes, tsunami, and other things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Acharya. I think it's really important to hear what you have to say. And I never want to be rude and interrupt someone who's so esteemed as yourself, who's elderly and has something important to say. So our last speaker will be Dr. Anneli Dreesen, and she's representing the Metaphysical. Anneli has been at the forefront of personal and corporate change for over 30 years. Since 1978, she has been a successful clinical therapist, mentor, and master certified coach to CEOs and other C-level executives, and served clients in North and South America, Australia, Asia, and Europe. Her book, Spiritually Based Leadership, is a unique guide to assist individuals in accelerating personal and career performances by integrating divine participants as well. I can't wait to read that book, but please go ahead. Yes.
Thank you, everyone. And I promise I will not go over 10 minutes. To answer the question to today's subject, we must first ask, who or what is God? It's one of the age-old questions. Let's assume that there is one, as we do as metaphysicians. I'm proposing for those who don't or question his existence A quote from Max Planck, a German theoretical physicist who originated the quantum theory. He wrote, "As a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter, I can tell you as a result of my research about the atoms this much. There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by the virtue of a force, which brings the particles of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter." This quote is in alignment with the findings of most all mystics, scientists, prophets, and today's leading thinkers. So if there is a God that is so difficult to grasp and define, where is he now? And where has he been all of last year? If this God indeed exists, how could he, she, or it allow these many, many disasters worldwide? Those kinds of questions are only asked when the questioner has a certain idea of a human-like God, a God that sits somewhere above the clouds and rules the world like a superior sort of monarch, someone who has transmitted to us what's right and wrong. On the other hand, it is readily accepted that God is also absolute love and forgives. This is confusing. Would he forgive some, but not others? As metaphysicians, we believe that God did not give us ever prohibitions, commandments, or prescriptions, but instead created a system of total justice through his universal laws and principles that are non-erringly and precisely operating throughout the universe. They are mirrored in nature. For example, the law of resonance, the law of polarity, the law of karma, what goes around comes around. The law of karma brings about cosmic justice. It is not a malicious invention from God, but an essential part of the operation of the universe. Karma is an undeviating, multidimensional, non-linear, infallible, and ongoing movement in the universe to restore harmony. It is both merciful and just. There are many more non-erring and eternal universal laws. Knowing about them gives great comfort to those who recognize, understand, and operate within them. A spiritual teacher by the name of Theobald once wrote, "No one escapes the justness of nature and the law of resonance. Those who question the justice of nature will never acquire freedom, as questioning it will bring nothing but confusion and suffering." Those laws are designed intelligently and brilliantly. If we learn what they are and how to use those wisely, our life on earth can be perfect. So rather than having some sort of ruler somewhere in the clouds, this kind of God, this energy or being only created laws that regulate everything. The pandemic is a result of humans doing. If anything, I see the pandemic to be a cue, a wink from the universe towards an anthropological turn, a trigger that has forced us to rethink priorities, to become better people. We have to think and get our act together, not put our heads into the sand, or simply hope everything bad will soon go away. The person who stands with indifference when an individual cries of pain or fear without any desire to relieve the distress is acting directly contrary to his or her soul's very essence, and is taking upon him or herself a heavy burden of karmic responsibility. Kindness, understanding, compassion, love, mercy, in fact, all of the fine and ennobling attributes of the fully developed human being belong distinctly in their action to this line of cooperation with nature's fundamental essence. So where is God during a pandemic or any other suffering? As metaphysicians, we believe that God is omnipresent and therefore also inside us. We can connect with God inside us in many ways, such as through prayer, meditation, or simply by being still. He will guide us to do the right, responsible, and loving thing. To provide comfort and a deeper understanding of God during times of suffering is also one of the goals of the Metaphysical Academy in Victoria, in Canada. Its program is both faith neutral and faith friendly, and provides students with answers to many existential questions. In closing, I want to share with you a short personal affirmation that works for me when I'm in pain about what's happening in the world, or when I feel anxiety or deep sadness. It is an affirmation that helps me regain my inner calm and confidence in trusting God's awesome creation with its structure of laws and organization. This affirmation is very personal, and it is the following: God is inside me, and everything else falls off. God is inside me, and everything else falls off. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a truly extraordinary gathering of men and women who've demonstrated in so many different ways that we can hold perspectives that are different from each other, that our truth is unique, it's authentic, and it doesn't always just fit into one ball, that we can be apart and different and hold views that are different from others. I think what's powerful about truth is that when we put it all together, and it has some energy around creating, impacting life of every creed, of every race, of every color. And we emit, you and I, from where we sit and understand things, the authority of our own idea of what love means and how we can share it with each other. I think we're all brought together this evening. All of you brilliant people are brought together this evening to find a way in which to exercise the special knowledge that you hold, the special perspectives that you hold. And this might be the only circle where we have that latitude. Otherwise, division is too fierce, too competitive. There's too much hate, too much division by many standards. But if we get people together like yourselves this evening, and you listen with deep respect, and whether or not in the moment you're agreeing or disagreeing with the person to whom you're looking at and hearing, and you love them, imagine how deeper our humanity becomes collectively when we can do that. I'm so honored that you asked me to be facilitator this evening. I didn't know for sure what I was getting into, but that's been my whole life. I've never been sure about what I get into. You won't know until you do it, right? And so we have these ideas together. And the importance of them is when we realize that we don't know it until we do it and apply it. Like in our everyday lives, how do we transmit the knowledge, the vast volume of knowledge that all of you, how do we transmit that to old people like me living in basements, in fear and isolation, not wanting to die, wishing upon a star that things are going to get better? How do you build resilience until we get there? Courage, bravery. How can you lend us some of that deep understanding you have, some of that spiritual energy, that the spiritual ways that you have, so that all of us can feel some confidence that God is with us during his time, and that when we get past this moment, this COVID moment, and I know we're almost there. As a matter of fact, we got the vaccines. People are feeling better, and we have faith. Whether we belong to a church or a religion or anything else, we have faith that things are going to get better. And there's a God of our understanding that isn't monolith in the way we understand him, that we can draw from that force and that energy and that love source to be inspired, to be engaged and do what it is that we can do about the pandemic. You guys are so brave, so visionary. And I can't wait to see your energy, the force that goes with it, inspiring other people wherever we are, in whatever state we may be thinking about our future. Rizwan, thank you for inviting me this evening. I love you. Everybody on the screen, this evening, I developed some degree of love for all of you and those listening who weren't with us, even though I was floundering and thinking, I hope I'm doing a great job. But we heard so many wonderful things that are inspiring, that as you weave it together, it has a power and an energy that goes beyond you and we on the Zoom tonight, that people will hear about. I don't think there's anything else that I can say other than to thank all of you for sharing yourselves this evening. That means thank you in our language at home. Thank you. I'll turn it back to Rizwan.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Before I make the closing remarks, I'd like to, Mr. Harold Rosen, I've been watching, and some other friends that are on Zoom channel, Craig, Bill MacArthur, Rainer, and Amy. Thank you. You are patiently watching, and I'm definitely will say you have enjoying. Harold, would you like to say for 1 minute anything?
1 minute. Oh, that's a big challenge.
Yeah.
You know, I loved the comments. I was asking myself a lot of the time, what aspect of God is involved in our suffering? I can think, as a Baha'i, I think of God as in different levels, you might say. An ultimate highest level, God is an unknowable essence. And then there's something by which God shapes the world. It's called the Word of God or Holy Spirit, primal will. And then below that, manifestations of God, figures like Abraham, Moses, Krishna, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, and Baha'u'llah, founder of the Baha'i faith, manifestations. those manifestations took human form and they suffered. And in their celestial realm, they're still suffering with us and guiding us. So I was finding truth in everything I heard. And I was just using the concept of levels of divinity to kind of help weave together some of the comments. Thank you so much. Wow, this is very energizing. And there was a practical dimension too with that expansive resilience shared by Sukhvinder. Thank you. Delightful program. Great job, Chief Joseph. Thank you. Good to see you in action.
Okay, thank you very much, Harold. Harold, I know it's an active member of Interfaith in Abbotsford. Helped us to promote the event. Sometime probably he is annoyed by my too many emails asking him to keep on sending messages, keep on asking people to attend the program. So thank you, Harold, to being a patient and working with us. Thank you, Rainer Army. I'll say we want to conclude the event. Now we're already late what we promised to in a program. First, I would like to say thank you to all volunteers help us to organize a virtual program. And also like to say thanks to the members, those are watching from Toronto, Ottawa, Los Angeles, Chicago, and some Toronto and many other cities, Calgary, and plus, not to forget, my son watching from the Guyana, he's transferred there as a missionary. So, and I also watched the comment from Maulana Tariq Azim, who was a missionary here and spoke in our many conferences together. He was watching from Jamaica, where Mr. Umair Khan used to be one time missionary in charge there. Now he transferred back to here and serving here. So much obliged and thankful to all the speaker panel. You have done an awesome job. I'm very much thankful to you. I don't have words for that because you have help us to promote the event and being a great partner to us that I cherish, starting from my screen, from the body on my left, Nelly, Squinder, Shrinath Dwivedi, Susan Shamars, Froze Barhani, and Harold Rosen spoke also many times in the conference, Father Ellen Dorcason, Maulana Umair Khan. All of you was great partner and really much thankful to you. And much thankful to go to Chief Dr. Joseph, building a friendship with him and having him moderate the program. It really means a lot to us, Dr. Joseph, that we've been a friend to each other, and we hope to build stronger relation with you and the community, Indigenous. I've been working from British Columbia to Yukon to building. I can say many of them become my brother and sister. In Yukon, Chief Doris Bill, she became a kind of sister to me. She's the chief of the nation there. And she also attended the program in Calgary. And I'm Kwallen Nation is the First Nation of Whitehorse or Yukon. It's a very big tribe, 2,000 members they have scattered in different parts of Yukon. This is, what means to me that we are involved. Last event of Victoria, Chief Andrew Victor moderated the program. And I was happy that he's become, a great partner to us. So thank you so much for all of you watching, those who have watched the program. Some of them stayed entirely on the event and some of them couldn't stay for some reason. So far, reported to us by the Zoom coordinator, Tahir Ahmed, who controls this channel for us and help us to organize. There are close to 350 right now, but actual attendance, including a Zoom. But actually attendance, we will find it after 1 hour or after 2 hours. And you can see it yourself at the link by clicking it. You will see the numbers in the bottom, the real numbers are. So with these closing words, really much to say, I am very much thankful to also our national president, Malik Lal Khan, who's a great supporter to us. And in Western region, Abdul Bari, our Vice National President, is very much helpful to me. Here, Mr. Naim Lakhan, Regional President of Ahmadiyya Muslim Community, BC, a great friend to me and so much help to me that help us to organize. We have traveled a long way, even to Alaska, Yukon, and Yellowknife, and many part of the city that we have traveled together to promote interfaith dialogue. We miss one-on-one meeting and hope to see you actually in person soon once this pandemic is over. I don't know what pandemic has given so much pain to other, but I could say sitting on the chair since the pandemic happened, I'm organizing the event sitting on the chair. Before I had to run for 3.5 hours until the event is over to find everything is going in order. So I didn't have any rest. So I didn't have any suffering with the pandemic. I have a much more to enjoy sitting on the chair than I can complain about that. But one thing also we noticed that pandemic has probably saved our planet. Why I'm saying that? When I saw the video, the pollution in New Delhi is very minimized to now. Now they can see clear sky. Before there was so much polluted world in New Delhi, and same in Shanghai and other major cities, that they couldn't even see the sky. Not to say any other distance that they could see it. And I could say to saving, not to fly these all the planes that were polluted on on atmosphere, probably had saved our planet. Maybe God had saved us from the bigger calamities that we could have we could have and die with that. So we don't know. Is just a child who is trying to grab the knife, doesn't know what he could do with that, or try to touch something hot that can burn his hands or face or something, but doesn't know that. So mother to keep that, from the child, from such kind of things to do it, it's probably child doesn't understand that way, probably screaming that way, mother, let me have that, but doesn't know what it can damage to them. So we don't know, time will tell with us. We already have experience. So I think so pandemic, it is suffering. It's truly suffering for some people. For me, sitting on the chair, organizing a world religion conference, much more to enjoy than I could say that. So thank you very much. So I leave with that. May God bless all of you. Hope to see you soon. Thank you very much once again.